You're listening to Hardscape Growth, a podcast for hungry professionals who want to grow their businesses and level up. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Hardscape Growth Show. I'm your host, Alex from Techo-Bloc, and today we're joined by Matt Daly from Water and Earth Landscape Design, coast-to-coast designs. Very exciting to talk with this gentleman today because we're going to talk about today's design trends. We're going to talk about how to turn those trends into opportunities to grow your business. It's a competitive market, so being able to stand out by the quality of design and how that brings value to the consumer is incredibly important today. We're also going to tease out one of the showcase projects that we're going to be presenting this winter because Matt designed one of them. So we're going to talk about that a little bit and probably how some of those trends translated into this project. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
All right. Glad to have you back. Our last conversation, for those of you who missed that episode, that was from the first year of the show, was super interesting because we talked about design. We also talked about some of the things you do with your blogs to create some awareness for your brand and all that stuff, pull traffic in, how you pre-qualify people. A lot of your stuff is done virtually, so very efficient. So lots of great stuff to check out there if you missed that episode. But today, it is the end of August, start of September 2023. We're talking about trends and how that will translate into landscape designs for 2024. So what are the current trends?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think there's a lot of things that have sort of bled over into this new phase of outdoor living, this sort of revamping. Everybody's redoing their properties after the pandemic and everyone's at home more. And so we're seeing a lot of rectilinear spaces, straight lines. Curvy isn't as popular as it used to be, or bringing curves into sort of rectilinear spaces to kind of get a little pop of some line difference, I guess. But I think what I've been finding most in the last year is that what's trendy now is what isn't trendy. I think that we've had a lot of the steppers with the grass in the middle and that kind of stuff. That's all kind of starting to go away for us, at least. People are really wanting to make things ultra unique to their property, and they want to use materials that help them really stand apart from the rest of the folks on the block. So we've really been seeing people really trying to dig in and say, I want this to look as cool as possible. I want it to look timeless so that several years or decades from now, it still looks current. So, I think...
What a riddle.
What's that?
What a riddle.
Yeah.
I want something that's unique and personalized to me, but I also want it to look timeless so that in 2, 3, 5, 10 years from now, it doesn't look like I built this on a whim in 2023.
Yeah, right.
How do you do that?
Yeah, it's a challenge. I think designs take a lot longer now with those desires, but the longer that we can talk about projects with our clients and the more we can just kind of flesh it all out, the more design phases that we have. I like to talk to these folks until they're blue in the face. So, once construction starts, they don't want to change anything. It's done. It's ready to roll. So
give me some examples of some of those unique things that people have been asking for recently that are forcing you to kind of get outside the box and look at different materials, patterns, colors, textures.
Yeah, a lot of people are a lot of my side of the industry in the design worlds with swimming pools, and a lot of people are starting to think about some really interesting pool shapes. And there's a lot of clients that have small properties where it would be challenging to put a 20 by 40 pool. So how do we put a plunge pool in? I think the plunge pool thing has slowly been creeping in. It's more popular in some parts of the country than other parts of the country, but they're working a lot with smaller pools and sort of, I've got one right now, a 12 by 60 that we're working on. I have talking to a guy about an 8 by 42. So they see these lap pools.
Size. Yeah. It's just
really,
you're just going up and down the pool. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's I get a little bit
it's
nervous.
Like a 1-to-5 ratio almost.
Yeah. I get a little bit nervous with the narrow ones. I don't want the kids trying to jump over the pool because that's a thing. So, and that could hurt. So, but I think the pool shapes is a big thing. And I think another big thing is sort of a byproduct of the pandemic is people wanting to do things outside that they wouldn't normally have done before. So, I've got a guy right now who has his poker night with his boys twice a week, and they want to play poker outside. I've never heard that, right? I mean, of course, it could just be a table and some beers and some chips, but they want to have like a dedicated poker spot outside. So that we got a lot of people that want to work outside, so we're trying to think of how do we have a workstation as well as an outdoor dining and food preparation section, right? So it's not the same thing. Um, and really, how do you sort of compartmentalize a client's wishes, and instead of just paving the entire thing,
Hmm.
how do you give them destinations within the space so that they can have different experiences in different places? And the space can be used as one when they're jamming on the weekends, but when it's just the fam during the week, people can kind of go to their areas and do what they want to do.
Interesting. The I guess I want to expand on destinations in the space, but I want to come back to like two of those key things, like the poker night or poker area
Yeah.
and the workstation outside.
Hmm.
First, are those examples of destinations that you're referring to?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And second, so what does that look like? What are some of the things that are included in that make it seem well, that make it different from what someone else would offer? Because like a poker table, like you just said, like I'll pave this area, I'll pop a table up, and bana.
Totally. So I'm not a gambling kind of cards kind of guy, so I had to like watch some TV shows to kind of figure out what that
Okay.
was all about. But I think we're thinking about usually we're trying to screen a property to block the neighbors out, but for that poker space, we're working on screening the actual space
Okay.
and controlling noise not from the outside, but controlling noise from the inside. So when they're hooting and hollering, we can try to contain that noise to the space. Uh, Sort of thinking about how when they get up and how they walk around that space, how are they able to access the refreshments and what does that look like? How do we get a door onto the house that doesn't exist right now to get to a bathroom faster? That kind of
Mm,
stuff. A lot of the same swimming pool conversations that we have. So, how do you make a space within a larger space feel custom, but not have it feel it still needs to feel like it's part of the backyard, right? It can't like look like an outdoor man cave that's in the middle of a larger outdoor space. It's going to
yeah.
look like you're at a sports bar or something, right? So we don't want to go that far, but
Okay.
we do want to be able to have our clients say that's the poker area and have it feel like an inviting place to sit down and lose some money.
So visually, it ties in with everything else, but it's clearly a dedicated space.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Interesting. What when you're talking about like the screens and the sound containment, little more specifically, what's that look like? Like some kind of shade structure with some automated or motorized screens, kind of
Yeah,
thing,
so
or
we've been playing a lot with the screens and designs. It's not something that I've really done, and I've recently started hanging with some contractors that are really into it. So that obviously makes it easier on the design side.
hmm
I think sometimes on the design side, sort of the higher end, larger projects, it's a little intimidating for a designer that's never done something because then you
mm
have to find a contractor that's willing to do it, and that's not always easy.
hmm
But finding contractors that are into things that we don't really know about, as long as they've done it, and we kind of like, can we do this? And they're like, yeah, we
yeah,
can do that. And so we're good. So, kind of a mix of fixed privacy screens, like slat wood situations, and then
okay,
combining that with privacy plants. And
okay,
then the motorized and automatic options, I think we can really get some sort of a triple tiered approach to help control noise. And then going the water feature route and that kind of thing. I mean, I'm something about water features and playing cards don't really go hand in hand, but there's that kind of stuff we can do as well. And then
but there's
outdoor
a sound
speakers.
element that
Yeah,
can
totally.
dampen, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, and then I guess a workstation would be similar. You'd be going for a different vibe, but you'd be looking for similar elements. You just use them a little differently, right?
Yeah, the workstation thing's interesting because like I'm sitting in this rolling chair right now. I'm sorry I'm rolling around so much. I haven't sat in one of these for a long time, but like you're outside and let's say you've got a paver patio and you can't really have a rolling chair on that, right? Because it's
Yeah.
not going to work. And so, you know, all of sort of the intricacies of the little pieces that make your workday what it is. The chair that you're sitting in, all the stuff that you have around you. Most people are staring at a computer screen these days. And how
Hmm.
do you do that outside and have it feel as comfortable as possible, but not feel like you're sitting in an outdoor bar? So that's been something that we've been working on a lot too.
So are there any particular things that you've discovered that make that a little more conducive to a comfortable working environment instead of a outdoor bar?
Not yet.
Okay.
That's new. That's fresh. The
Yeah.
poker table thing's been going on for a while.
Okay.
It's how do you sit outside and look at a space and say, well, that probably feels like somewhere where I could sit down and do a podcast and
Yeah.
not eat dinner with the family. So I'm trying to figure out,
So a
you know,
truly dedicated, not a multifunctional space that like when I'm working, but otherwise we're just hanging out here.
that's right.
It's basically like so that just like everyone was doing in the pandemic, or lots of people were discovering anyway, like working at the kitchen table isn't ideal.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And it's a lot of people are going like the tough shed route, and they're customizing a
Yeah.
tough shed and then putting it in their backyard and running all the Cat 5 cable to it. I mean, that that's nice, but I like the idea of dedicated outdoor space. And for our Virginia clients, that's not a reality, right? But it rains 2 or 3 times a week. It's either really hot or cold. But in California, it's totally realistic, and it can be done for the majority of the year.
Well, if you figure out what that looks like in terms of amenities, I'd be curious to hear what
Yeah.
that means, because even
let you
just the
know.
light reflecting off screens and stuff. Like I work outside a lot in my backyard.
Yeah.
If it's something where I don't need multiple screens, if I'm just going to be working like straight off the laptop,
hmm
I have a couple spots that I know I can get comfortable and have the sun, and the sun's not glaring right off the screen, and so it
Totally.
works. But I definitely don't have a full office out there with a
hmm
office chair and everything. I'm not spending an entire day sitting there, a
I
couple
know.
hours just to break things up,
Yeah, totally. I'm excited to
Um,
see where that goes.
yeah, yeah, but I think I really do believe that is something to explore, and at minimum to discuss with clients, because I see the value myself, and I see lots of clients of contractors I've spoken to that they didn't think that they would, but it just so happens that it's comfortable enough and it's quiet enough that I can work outside. I can take a couple calls. I can do whatever. It's a beautiful day. Why not? It's right. I'm staring at it out the window. Why not just go out there? And I think that
Exactly.
that can help justify some of the investments from the homeowner's perspective too, because I can use this multiple times throughout the week, multiple times throughout the day for multiple purposes. And I think that's where the value really comes into play.
Absolutely.
If we're talking about choices and materials, you said like the trend is not being trendy, so that means that it's a mixed bag of things.
Yeah.
Are there particular things that have been surprising to you in terms of requests of materials, or it's really you're proposing the things, and that's where it's coming from? They just
Well,
want something that's unique, and you pull out of the
yeah,
deck of cards to pull that poker reference, and you see what hand you get dealt, and you play with it.
I think there's three sort of routes, right? It's either they have no idea what they want and they're looking for recommendations, or they have an idea of what they want and they want to stay within a certain sort of theme, or I'm getting like sent, another designer or another contractor's work and saying, I like this kind of style. I have a client right now in the Bay Area who is sending like every photo on another designer's Instagram, and I kind of think like, well, why don't you just hire them? But it's a lot of people, just everybody's more in tune with social media and all that, and it's I think Pinterest is still very popular, but there's alternatives now that you can get to pretty photos faster. So it's a mix of the three. I think with us, it's people that like our work and they want their backyard to look like a project in our portfolio, but they want to personalize it to their own space. So it's kind of how do we take this project from 2021 and make it look like it's yours, and it doesn't match that project.
Are there specific questions or things you look for that make that personalization process a little easier for you? Because
Um,
I have to imagine that, like, even when I look at your portfolio, like, there's clearly a style there.
yeah.
So it's important for them, if they're hiring you, that they've acknowledged that style and that's what they're looking for, and that's great. But how do you keep it fresh and different and personalized to them? You need to go and pull some unique threads out of them. How do you go about doing that?
I think showing them were, I think, I like going through my entire portfolio with people and I not asking them what they like, I asking them what they don't like, right? Because,
Okay.
if you ask somebody someone's about to spend a whole bunch of money on something and it's like a little kid in a toy store, right? They're like, oh my God, everything. But if you say, what do you not like? It's easier for them to say, well, I don't like that because of this, and I don't like this because of that. And so you kind of taking that list and kind of whittling it down to what the available things are. So from that intel that we gather, we can then say, okay, well, what about this? And they're like, yeah, I like that, that, that. And then how do we take those things and marry them together?
Interesting. Instead of what they like, what they don't like. Have there been some recent surprises with things that they said they didn't like, and you never would have known had you not asked that question?
That's a good question. Everyone's different. I think you talk to one person and they don't like one thing and so someone else loves it. So I think it's really a case by case, and it's also really interesting if we're working for like if I it's been interesting this year. A lot of the homeowners kids have been joining the calls, and the
Mm,
kids are starting to put their say in to what things are going to look like. But let's say you have a family of three, and you get on with the Mr. Smith, and Mr. Smith loves and doesn't like a bunch of different things, and then Mrs. Smith um, gets on there, and she's completely different, and then Smith Jr. gets on and is just picking everything. Once you get all three of them on together, and you can kind of hear them squabble with each other off of the questions that I'm asking, even just the sort of conflict that I'm able to pick up off of their side of the screen,
mm,
you really get a lot of intel about what direction the project's can take.
that's
Just
interesting.
sort of picking up details from behind the scenes that they're not even,
They're not aware of, but
yeah,
you
they're
as a
not
design
communicating to
professional,
you.
you're yeah. We did well, the episode that came out a couple days ago with Zach Kitzmiller. That was one of the things that we talked about, was not just what is said, but also what is not said,
Yeah,
and picking up on that. And
yeah,
that's where you can add a lot of value. If it's just what they said, it's pretty obvious when you present it back to them, because for them it's like, oh, well, yeah, I said that. But when it's something like, you weren't saying this, but because you said this and this, to me, that meant that.
yeah.
That's where, I mean, I feel the homeowner would see how much more value you're bringing to the equation, because you're interpreting what's being said and then translating that into a proper landscape design for them.
Yeah, and also like taking that intel that you learn just from watching people and families interact, and then sort of coming up with, like, kind of putting that idea together in my head and then delivering it back to them.
Mm.
So they didn't physically say it, but I picked up on it through the conversation. And usually it's sort of a full circle moment if I deliver it correctly,
Yeah.
and then things usually get going in the right direction from there.
Give an example.
Not off the top of my head. I'd be, yeah, not off the top of my head. I mean, it, a lot of my clients, when I'm talking to them, I don't really prepare for the meetings other than having the design ready, right? So I kind of just turn my brain off and start talking. So it's hard for me to go back and remember how those conversations went, which is
You're playing
horrible
it
to
by ear.
say.
It's
I
an
hope no
improv show.
potential clients are watching this, but it's it's yeah, I don't know. It's easy to talk about sitting here talking to you, but I don't. No, I don't have a case by case. Like, this happened, and
Okay. Well, let's go back to one thing that you said, where a lot of the homeowners' kids are getting involved.
yeah,
That was the case, at least when I met the homeowners for this project that we worked together on for Showcase.
hmm
That was in Virginia.
It
And
was.
I flew down and met with them and the contractor just to talk about some of the different materials and understand, like, what is there to film here to that's interesting and relevant to the professional community. But
Mhm.
the kids were a large part of that conversation, and the things that they want around the house and the things that they're interested in, and their passions, and kind of how the futures that their parents see for them. That was all part of things that need to be in the backyard.
Mhm.
You want to talk about that job a little bit?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That project started with the family wanting a swimming pool, like most of them start with,
Mm-hmm.
and they were um, they're probably going to be watching this, but they were challenging to work with in the beginning. We It wasn't that they were doing something wrong or I was doing something wrong. We just couldn't really get on the same path. And that didn't really happen until halfway through the design project. We sort of found that sort of symbiotic situation and it kind of fell in line with each other. And then everything went amazing. But really struggled in the beginning with that project to figure out how to orient the pool and how we were going to sort of check all of the client's boxes and give them a space that they loved. And they were they were intense to work for in the beginning. They let me know what they were thinking, and I love that. I try to be a straight shooter with everybody I work for, but they were shooting real straight, and I was struggling to grasp it, but we got it. We turned it around, and then the contractor came in, and you guys showed up, and it was just this cool thing that
Yeah,
that
and just evolve from there.
yeah
But in the beginning, when you and I started talking, there were, from what it looked like in the beginning to what it looked like a week later to what it
yeah
looked like 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, and then by
yeah
the time we got there, and then the final build, like it was a constantly evolving thing.
yeah.
Is that something that's been quite common in the recent months or years that you've been doing this, or is that kind of more of an outlier?
It's an outlier. I'm a control freak. And I want this stuff to go my way. That's why we have a very thorough design process and it's longer than most. And that's why I want to control the contractors that are building the projects and I want to control all the materials. And so it was really challenging for me when, the contractor got involved and then you guys were, we were all trying to figure out what it was, what was going to get upgraded and it's, but it wasn't challenge. If I was doing it with a bunch of people I didn't know, I would have been like, I'm out of here. See you guys, right? But I do know everybody, so it's like it's cool because it's especially with a client that sort of started out challenging. So how do you sort of evolve this idea? And then we got to the end, and it was sort of done, and then the cavalry showed up and sort
Hmm.
of brought the rest of the idea home. So I almost didn't really have to I didn't have to be the idea guy anymore. I could just be part of the wider team that was cooking up ideas. So
Yeah, it's definitely an uncommon approach to designing a project. I'll give you that. Um, in terms of the project itself, you said like the whole need originated with a pool,
mhm,
and then figuring out where the pool was. That was the start of the challenges.
mhm,
Let's dive into that a little bit in terms of the challenges. You said that the project started with the pool, and
yeah,
the first challenge was figuring out where the pool is going to go.
right,
Uh, and then from there, they had quite the wish list for the project.
they did.
That wish list seemed to fluctuate quite a bit. It was very long, then very short, then very long
Yeah,
again, then
yeah,
somewhere in
it
the
changed
middle.
every day. Yeah,
And there were some things that seemed like non-negotiables, and then like a few days later, it was like, yeah, that's fine, we can get rid of it.
totally.
Let's talk about what some of those things were and the impact that had on the design process. So I wasn't involved with them in the beginning. So
Yeah.
why don't we start there and kind of talk about what your experience was? Because for people trying to get into the higher end of the market, or for people who are relatively new to the higher end of the market, it can be intimidating because you're talking about significant investments with people who are probably pretty powerful in their professional life. Either they run a business or they own a business or,
Yeah.
or both. So they're used to kind of getting their way, and they know how to negotiate for things, and they know how to ask for things, and they know how to be demanding, but in a very polite and sometimes very sneaky way, because
Yeah.
that's what they do as a profession.
Sure.
So how do you navigate that? And what are some of the examples of the back and forth where maybe you had to put your foot down and like, listen, you're hiring me for a reason. We got to work together here.
So no one's ever packaged that way, but it's all correct. Working, the higher budgets, the the middle high sixes, the low sevens, they're an extremely intelligent people, and they're sneaky. Sneaky is a good word. It's not a bad thing. But it's a good way to say it. Whenever I walk into a project like this, it's not what do you want? Like, it always starts with a pool. So, okay, pools are easy. What else do you want to do? And it's not what do you want, it's what experiences you want to have. And then you sort of, they're not saying, well, I want a fire pit and I want some seating walls and I want some steps. They're saying, well, I want to dance, I want to swim, I want to work, I want to cook, eat, and sit by a fire. And it's like, okay. And then you take all of those things and you come back with an idea. That project was challenging for me. I think what was challenging in the beginning was they wanted a dance floor.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, we have some large paver backyards, but the dance floor thing was scary for me because that's just a big open space. And I was trying to make the dance floor smaller and smaller. They wanted it to be bigger and bigger. I think where we landed is a happy medium. It's built now and looks beautiful, but the dance floor, and then how do you put things around the dance floor and have it all look, how do you make it look like a space? How do you make it a space where people could dance, but also that doesn't look like it's a dance floor?
Yeah, because for anyone who's been to if you've been to a wedding at a hotel or something, like, you look at those big ballrooms.
Ballroom, yeah,
totally. The dance floor is just a big square in the middle.
So absolutely,
that's it. It's the tiled part of the floor, and that's it. Right. So, what was your approach there? How did you tackle that? And what did that conversation look like from the perspective of, like, you're worried about it being too big and dominating the space and just killing the vibe, and they're worried about, like, well, we have like a 60-person family that comes over and we want to dance.
And they do. And so you just stop talking and start listening. If they're not going to listen to me and do what I want them to do, then you kind of just gotta, I don't know, you gotta let them have those few inches and kind of spread that love that you would have used on that space around the rest of the property. I mean, I'm not saying it looks bad in any way, shape, or form. It looks great, but there's no way. I like small stuff, quaint, romantic spaces, and we've done some very large ones in the last couple of years. And as I look at those projects, it's like, oh my God, that could have been $100,000 cheaper pretty easily. So it's, I want to give them what they want, but obviously they're paying me to tell them to fight back. But some things like a dance floor, dance floors can't get too small or
you can't dance.
It's not a dance floor anymore. So whatever, we got a dance floor, we got a pool, and some other fun stuff.
What's some of the other fun stuff?
Yeah, so we've got a covered outdoor kitchen, which is going to be really nice, which is really nice. And then we've got a fire pit area. We've got sort of a steady fall on the grade from the back door of the house. You walk down about 5 steps, and then the yard is really large for the area. So, they've got this full spread, dancing, dining, all the things. And then they have an entire another backyard that's just grass. Their house goes from property street to street, right? There's no neighbor in the back behind them. So that's really cool, because usually we're like totally slaying somebody's grass area to put in the thing, right? But yeah, they can eat out there, they can dine, they can dance, they can swim, they can sun, and they can play wiffle ball, which is like all the best things in real grass. Yeah,
well, one of the daughters is quite the intense soccer player, so I know that was important. They needed to keep that area to have the net and kick the ball around. I guess one of the big challenges, though, with that property was the sloping yard. I mean, it's basically a 4-tiered landscape design now. if you look at the level where you come out of the house and then down one more, then you have the main pool deck, which is the
Yeah, you're
same
right.
level as the kitchen and everything. Then we come down level to the pool with the secondary pool deck, and then you go down another level to the grassy area.
Yeah.
So that conversation with the clients, at least in my experience, the cost of the project is going to jump through the roof because you have so many retaining walls. We need to cut into this slope to be able to build up and fill to have the things that you need. Otherwise, the pool is going to be really high up, and then we got to build one big wall in the back, or we got to have a massive staircase coming out of the house onto one flat area. So was that a challenging conversation to have, or were they just going with it?
They rolled with it. I mean, we struggled a lot on that project in the concepting stage. The first phase of our design process is 2D. There's no 3D, and people have trouble orienting themselves a lot because they're with a grade challenge like that. I mean, I guess all things considered, that could be one. That's probably one of the best grade challenges, right? It's a steady slope. It's easy to work with, but showing the client and getting them to kind of fall in love with that idea. It was, we were sort of having difficulties in the design process without looking at 3D. So when they saw 3D, we thought we had it figured out at the end of the concepting phase, and then we hit 3D, and then there was a whole new host of conversations. So there was a few different points in that design discovery process that I probably could have handled better. I could have probably customize the experience to the client so it went a little bit more smoothly on my end and for them as well.
So what does that mean? Like you would have shown the 3D more
earlier
and more often, or
if we have people that are struggling because they're not looking at it in 3D, if we're going 2D, 3D back to 2D for final plans, I probably should have done 3D first, which we talked about in the last podcast, and so I won't go into why I don't like doing that, but I think this market that we're in, there's less business, right? Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
I can't really just always be using this design process that I have just kind of like sort of shit my clients through. I need to start sort of customizing my output so that it's easier to communicate, because that's what I am, right? I'm a backyard communicator.
This episode is brought to you by Hardscaper.com. The Hardscaper mission is to empower industry professionals with the skills, inspiration, and confidence they need to take their businesses to new heights. Struggling with training programs for your team? Looking for helpful tips to build a better company? Subscribe today to gain access to hours of interactive on-demand Hardscape construction and business courses for free. Check out Hardscaper.com. I like that term.
Yeah, me too. I never.
It's like a horse whisperer, but for backyard.
Yeah, backyard.
But yeah, I think that's an important point that you just touched on, though. Like the last 3 or 4 years, it's my way or the highway. Like, if you don't like it, hire someone else. Good luck finding someone else.
Man, I mean, I'll be honest. In preparation for this today with you, I watched our last podcast.
Okay.
It was cringe. I couldn't look at it, and I had to just listen to it because I didn't care. I had a tie-dye shirt on. My hair was like a mop. I had a backwards hat on, and I just, we were just getting so much business. I could just kind of do whatever I wanted. And I was like, then this market rolled around. I was like, I got to get a haircut. I got to get some company shirts. I got to be a little bit more, legit. But yeah, it's a different market. Clients are looking for high-end clients are looking for customized experiences, not only in the design side of things, but also the contracting side and the materials and all the things. They want it to feel like it's customized to them. A trend that I have found recently that I think is really interesting is, even though we're not getting the volume of work that we were back then, we're still getting a lot. And a lot of, the people are being a little bit more buyer savvy, and almost every call I've had in the last year, potential clients are saying on the phone, are there any questions that I haven't asked? I have never heard nobody's ever asked me that until this year. And I'm not sure if there's some home owning guru that's telling them to say that or what it is, but it's been really interesting. I kind of go through my spiel and I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, do you want to move forward or not? And then they throw that at me, and it knocks me off my rhythm, and I have to kind of really think and get back into the conversation.
Yeah. That's a really good question, though. On either side, really.
Totally.
Whether it's you or them,
Yeah.
are there any questions? Because then you're addressing, have I met your expectations?
Mm-hmm.
And that's an important one. And ideally you're exceeding their expectations, but I think even having the consciousness or the presence of mind to ask that question genuinely, like, have I covered everything that you expected me to cover? Have I hit every question you expected me to ask you? Are there other things that you thought we would be discussing today? I think it shows that you're committed to serving that person. And I think that's a great way to start the relationship.
Yeah, I think it's also a sign that potential clients are talking to a lot of different companies, and they want to make sure they get all of the information in one go so they can make an informed decision and execute. So it's a little nerve-wracking because I feel like when I hear that question, it's like, oh, maybe I didn't sell it the right way. But everybody's asking it. Every project budget, from the little ones to the ones that are a little bit too big.
So on that topic of people appear to be shopping more, are there other signs that you're seeing outside of the questions they're asking or the things that they're doing? Are they straight up saying, well, we're also talking with this designer, or we're also talking with this company, this contractor? Or, you said there are kind of three routes that the customer kind of comes down.
Mm-hmm.
Either they know what they want, or they have a really good idea, or they have someone else's plans or someone else's stuff, and they want you to do something different. Are you seeing that more often? Like, are there indicators that outside of what we see visually in terms of like, it's a little leaner out there, are there things that are saying to you, the haircut's great and the shirts are great, but I got to keep stepping up my game here?
I think when you're sort of in a certain market of clients with certain project budgets, certain expectations, I would say with this leaner time of business, a lot of the sub 100K clients have gone into the witness protection program, right? And that's fine. We don't work with them, so. But it's just hearing other people talk. So that's been really interesting to me. But with our usual client, the 3, 4, 5 and up, they're just like we just talked about it. They're asking more questions. They're being more careful. They're clearly not sitting on cash. The money's invested. They have to move it around, and that takes time. So they're just really thinking about the best time to do things. So a lot of the conversations I've been having aren't about cost, they're about time. When are we, and that's always been a thing, right? I've always called it the graduation party nightmare. It's got to be done by the graduation party, but that never happens, right? So it's been a lot of that. So I'm sort of hoping here, we're about to hit September, kids are back in school, temperatures are about to change, people are going to start thinking about next summer here soon, and I think the conversations I've been having for the last 2 or 3 months have been heavier and more inquisitive because people are getting ready to spend a winter in construction.
The design process, you already said, was pretty long and extensive.
Yeah.
By contrast to others in our industry, the way that you do it.
Yeah.
Have you seen it become longer, or are people, you're nodding and saying, the design process has gotten longer. Are their timelines also intentionally stretched out because they know they have to move money around, or because whatever, they're looking at the interest rates, or looking at how their investments are performing, and they're waiting for things to rebound? So, I want to start now, but, instead of starting in the next 3 to 6 months, if we could start next year, that'd be good too,
Yeah, people just want to be smart. They want to make sure they're making the right decisions. And I think that there's this whole, our industry, construction, renovation as a whole, the whole industry went through that whole pandemic
Hmm.
rush of business. There was just so many people were just signing and pressing yes and pressing deposit just because they wanted to get going, and they just wanted
Hmm.
to have it. They wanted to beat the rush, and the rush is over. And there's still some residual issues from it, right? But it's over. So people are you have all have friends. Everybody knows somebody that put a pool in that time, and so they're making sure that what happened to them doesn't happen on their own project. And so it's a financial decision, it's a timeline decision, but I think ultimately it's a quality of life decision. So make sure that they're making the right decisions first.
So I find the last thing you said very interesting, that the homeowners all have someone, they all have someone in their circle that has gone
Yeah.
through it, and they probably had some good stuff and some not so good stuff, because the
Hmm.
last 3 years were absolutely bananas.
Right.
Are there things that you see homeowners are uncommonly prepared for now that you need to anticipate or proactively address?
Well, I think a lot of consumers think that there's here still this whole material backup. And we were dealing with that in the very beginning of that situation where you just couldn't find block, or you couldn't find boxwoods, and it was just all gone because everybody was slammed installing it, and the suppliers didn't forecast it, and so didn't stock up, and the manufacturers didn't know it was coming, so they didn't make enough. They were going after last year's stock. And I think a lot of consumers are coming into this thinking that that's still an issue. So if anybody's, watching this and maybe struggling to pick up a project, like, just get on Instagram and say, hey, everything's available, because it is. And when people hear that, I think they'll stop putting this stuff on hold.
Hmm. Are there other things? Like
I mean,
either they had a bad experience or
everybody's
something?
cautious of the sketchy pool builder, right? And a lot of
Okay.
those guys came out to the party in those last few years,
Hmm.
and a lot of them went to jail, right? But
Yeah.
there's a lot of stories. I mean, and everybody that's listening to this knows somebody, probably somebody like that too, right? So, people are cautious. That they're reading more reviews. They're asking questions. Uh, I never knew you could do this, but on the review platforms, like, if I wrote a review about your business right now,
Hmm.
another consumer that was thinking about hiring you could click on my review and contact me. So I've heard of these conversations happening in the background about me that I don't know about, and it's not between two people that know each other. They're trying to, like, was it a good fit? Was the spend worth it? Are his contractors any good? That kind of stuff. So
Wow.
people are just being more careful, and it's scary, but it's also fun, because it's all of these new scenarios and sort of expectations that I don't know, or I have never navigated it before. So you got to kind of adapt and innovate.
Hmm.
They say innovate or die, right? So just got to stay on the ball and make sure you're delivering what people want.
Yeah, and I think but that's always true. There's kind of this. I said at the outset, I don't remember if we were recording it or not, but I was talking about how the higher end, the companies that cater to the higher end projects, they're okay right now. They're not on fire, but they're doing all right.
Yeah.
We're not panicking. But the ones that have been more focused on the middle class projects, or weren't focused on anything and were just taking anything that came to them over the last few years, they're the ones that are struggling more. Some are struggling quite a bit.
I know. Yeah.
But
We have a lot
there
of.
is lots of opportunity out there if you know where to look and you know how to approach it, and that's
Yeah.
why we're having this conversation and last week's conversation with Zach and a couple others that'll be coming up. Like, how do you tap into that? But I think the constant innovation, that the need to keep bringing something new to the table is one of the most important ways to do that. Like, you have to constantly be looking at what's happening around you. Not only what can you do, but what's happening around you, so that you're adapting to that situation and
Yeah.
going the extra mile. as we talk about in the Hardscaper High Five, the 5 core values of any successful business that we've seen over the last decade plus. One of them is adding value, and making sure to go that extra mile in terms of making sure the homeowner feels confident with the decision, that you've covered everything that they were thinking about. Your network of contractors, in your case, because you're not building, they're reputable, and you're checking up on the progress of the project, and you're making sure that everything is going the way that they expected or better. Yeah. Because reviews are still, it's word of mouth, but on steroids. And totally. If someone wants to shit on your business, they can do it, and they can do it hard.
Yeah, you'll lose money. I think, to add to your point of going the extra mile, having nice designs and different ideas and the right contractors and access to the right materials, but also in a market like this, like, get to know your people better. Like, what do you guys like outside of the project? What do you guys like to do? And like, where do you go on vacation? And like, or hey, do you want to go to Topgolf and get a beer and just like hit some balls for an hour? And because people, with everybody kind of coming out of their houses and getting back into the world here before winter comes right now and everyone goes back in, and people want to be outside. They want to be, they want to be having social time. And if I have several 7-figure situations right now, and those people want to hang. And it's awesome because you can kind of figure out how they got to where they are, and you can talk about what you're passionate about with what I am rather with backyards, and maybe call it a courting process, sure, but it's I've had a lot of clients that are very successful, and successful people like it when you ask them how they got successful. And so really sort of getting to know them as people rather than just as marks or potential clients has really been helpful for me. And really just getting rid of the pitch. I mean, everyone sees through the BS, right? It's the pitch is dead. I mean, you see a lot of the people posting on social media, award-winning, blah, 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 and it's just like, people don't care about that anymore. They want to talk to somebody they feel like they can relate with, and if they're going to be, stuck with somebody in their backyard for 8 months, get stuck with somebody you like hanging out with. And I've been trying to do a lot of that, and making my clients and my people part of my ecosystem, and showing them why I get excited about things and why I don't get excited about things. And the better I get to know my clients, and it's just, I feel post-pandemic that there's this whole nother level of I don't even know what to call it. It's just camaraderie. People want to meet more people and expand their circles.
I think that last part was incredibly interesting, and it's something that's underexplored in conversations with businesses. I'm even thinking of all the conversations with companies that are banging out $500,000, $1 million projects. And it's something that we don't talk about much, but it's absolutely true. Every time I go out to one of these super high-end jobs with the contractor, the homeowner comes out all smiles, super excited to shake hands and like, hey, how's it going? How's it? Like, they know they are buddies. And earlier in my career, I thought that was just like, it was a coincidence because, I wasn't always on these massive jobs. But now that I think about it more and more, every time I land on a big job and I'm there with the designer or the contractor or both, everybody's buddies. And you're absolutely right in the sense that like, well, they're going to be at my house for a significant portion of the year. Like, we will end up being friends. Otherwise, it's going to be a complete disaster. Totally. Like it's not, there's no gray area there. So getting to know them early in the process, and even one of the episodes that we did with Eric Agib from Snow Melting, that one came out in June, but he was talking about how his regular projects now are in the 6 figures, no problem. He's even doing $750,000, $800,000 projects. But he was saying how the relationship changes when you start getting into those higher end projects, and you need to read the people before you get involved, because if you aren't going to get along, just as much as a homeowner can leave a bad review for you. If there was a great way to leave bad reviews for homeowners, I'm sure plenty of people on our side of the fence would be doing that too. So you got to be able to read them and you got to get to know them. I really find that interesting, grabbing a beer, smacking a couple balls, asking them some questions, getting to know them. And I think it works both ways.
Yeah, it also has to do a little bit with getting older, right? When I was in my early 20s, it was kind of hard to go to someone that was making 7 figures a year and say, what do you do, right?
Yeah.
But now 20 years later, it's easy to, sit down and have a conversation, and people want to. I think a lot of people sort of instinctively have that desire to teach, right? And even if they don't want to be a teacher, they want to.
There's a desire to share. And I think
on.
that's the biggest thing when you're talking about like the difference in the last few years coming out of the pandemic. Humans, we're social creatures, and part of being social is to share food, to share drinks, to share things, to share knowledge, to share experiences. And that's what our business is. We're creating the spaces that facilitate all that sharing. But I think you're absolutely right in the sense that like people crave that. So if you tap into that, like, can you share something with me? It seems like you're being, you might even feel like you're being greedy because you're asking them to share something with you. But really, it's one of the things that people like to do the most, whether they know it or not.
Another thing is sharing responsibility. And so one of the directions I'm going to start going, both sides of the country, is bringing other designers in, and not under my scope, in their own spot. Well, under my scope and also by themselves, rather than, we have a big one we're working on right now. I brought in a planting designer. I didn't want to deal with it. I brought in a lighting designer. I didn't want to deal with it. I didn't want to deal with it because I don't know how to do it. I didn't want to deal with it because the project needs to be that special, and we need 3 or 4 groups of professionals that are passionate about their little piece, but also the overall project. And when you have a 7-figure project and the client's able to spend, I don't know, 30 or 40, 50K on design and planning, then we can say, okay, I'm gonna bring 3 or 4 of my friends. We're all gonna do what we do, and we're gonna do it together. And that sort of creates a really neat ecosystem too, not only between us designers, but then going into the larger ecosystem of contractor and pool builder, and then the even larger ecosystem of homeowner. And then all of a sudden your design and build team is 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, that's 8 or 9 people.
Yeah.
And that, sitting down with that many people in a backyard, and the contractors that are engaged, they're also designers. So you've got like 7 friends talking to clients who you've been working with that are starting to become friends. And it's like this round table. It's awesome. It's a feeling that I've just started to experience, and I want more of it.
Yeah, but I think you're going to enjoy it because if I look at I don't know how many years of showcase projects, from the beginning, really. So the 18 years of showcase projects that I've been involved with, that's exactly how it goes. Like, we have our team, and then we have the contractor team, and then we have the design team, which is either an architect or a landscape design firm, or a few designers, or our own in-house landscape architects and designers get involved. We have a trends committee at Techo-Bloc, so sometimes they'll be involved. Like, this is what we're seeing coming down the pike. So, see if you can integrate some of these things, and we present them to the homeowner. That collaborative effort really brings some very cool things to the table. And it makes especially if you're saying that the biggest trend is to not be trendy right now. And the biggest trend is that people want something that's customized and personalized and unique to them. Yeah. What better way to do that than to have so many minds together tackling the problem? Because every time you'll come up with a different solution. Cool. And I think that's that's a brilliant insight in terms of how do you cater to that higher end side of things, and how do you do it where you're sharing the load and you're not trying to carry $1 million design home on your back. Right. You need to do it as a team.
Totally. Absolutely. I think one more trend point I'll make is that if you look out at the world and you look at cars, all car colors are changing. they're milkier colors. They're different shades. You don't see just a blue or just a red. There's all these sort of pastel colors now. And if you look at what people are wearing, the clothes are getting simpler and there's more unisex things. I mean, that's a huge market now. And I think as everything sort of modernizes and there's just less waste and less, not less pop, but just things are becoming a little bit more monotone. It's not as noisy as it
Subtle.
once was. Yeah,
Yeah.
subtle. Subtle is the word. Uh, I feel like backyards are kind of doing that too. You're you're making outdoor living and outdoor living situations that process more efficient for clients with your people. You're customizing spaces with nice things so that it feels custom to the property, and it just the sort of wow buzzy thing that used to be really popular I feel like is going away, and it's more about sort of a utilitarian kind of outlook, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think that has to be, because some of those things may be associated with boring, but I think it's simplistic, or I don't know if simple or minimalist or any of those things are the word, but
Yeah.
it's quieter, it's more subtle, it's more chill maybe.
Yeah.
You know.
It's the future, like the Jetsons never had a dirty house, right?
There you
Right.
go.
So it's simpler
Yeah.
living, less friction. If another pandemic pops up, life is manageable.
hmm Well, I think we even see that with the project that we built. That whole kitchen is all done with clean block products, even the floor. So I mean, it's a stain resistant, clean,
Yeah.
easy. I don't have to worry about it. And then the rest of the pool deck, it's all blue grande and gray nickel. So it's just a nice, clean, smooth. And the things that need to stand out are the people and the features, like the fire features and the pool and the lighting and the plants. And it's the background. It's not necessarily the focal point. And I think that depends on the client, it depends on the project, it depends on a lot of things. But definitely, I mean, when we look at the trends in terms of the paving options, large swaths of the area are one clean thing. And then the intricacy is like either an inlay or a banding or a combination of both. But there's always like this one peaceful area. And I think that's kind of what you're alluding to, right?
Yeah, I know. And the one thing you didn't mention about the details of the space is also the experience of getting from grass to where we are now, right? Because
Mm,
what's that saying? People are always gonna remember how you made them feel and not what you said or whatever. And
yeah.
that's if in a slower market where we're not, it's just not what it was, and we're trying to figure out how to stay in business. I mean, not like that, but you know
No,
what I
no,
mean.
but like
Uh, it's
we've grown accustomed to a certain lifestyle that we'd like to continue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Uh, that experience is what takes the cake, and
hmm
that's the experience. Whether that's negative or that's positive or somewhere in the middle. These clients are going to go talk to all their friends, and we're either going to get a bunch of projects off of it, or we're going to get none. And gotta if we're moving through this process as a ecosystem, all the people, all the designers that are excited and continuously challenging each other, and the client sees that, then it's going to be nothing but good,
hmm
and more work will come of it.
Good. I think that's a good way to end it, Matt. Thank you very much for joining us on the show this week. Um, if people want to see the design of the project that we were talking about, they can check it out by coming to Hardscaper Showcase this winter. It'll be from January to the end of March across Canada and the US. So it'll be a great time. We'll have Paver Pete and the guys up on stage yelling and screaming about all the things that we built and designed. And if people want to get in touch with you, Matt, they want to ask questions, or they're interested in that network of designers and contractors that you're building and you're working on, what's
Yeah,
the best way for them to do that?
I think Instagram's the spot. That's where I hang out the most when I'm not looking at the screen or in someone's backyard. So Instagram's a good place. I like sending voice messages. That's the way I do it now. So, or if anybody wants to hop on a call, I'm always around. I'm happy to talk about what I'm excited about, but what you want to be excited about.
All right, and that handle on Instagram is WE. Where is it here? Underscore. There we go. WE underscore landscape
design
on Instagram. Perfect. Matt, thank you once again for joining us. I think this was really interesting. As usual, when we talk, kind of go a little bit everywhere, but there's a couple little nuggets in there throughout the journey. And until next time, everyone, work hard, pave harder, and we'll see you next week on the Hardscape Growth Show. You've been listening to Hardscape Growth, a podcast for hungry professionals who want to grow their businesses and level up. Each episode is all about taking the next step in running your business, so make sure you never miss a show by subscribing on your favorite podcast player. And if you're finding this information to be useful, help others in your position discover us by giving us a star rating and leaving a comment. We'll see you next week.